Hello.
We are back again. We just had a quick break. We wanted to introduce you to Lisa Johnson, who is our business mentor and has been supporting us this year as part of a mastermind, which we've got so much out of. And Lisa's had a #1 podcast herself, haven't you, Lisa?
I have. I love that you've got champagne. This is how it should be. Congratulations on your podcast. I have. So yeah, we started as, I want to say 2 months ago. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really want a podcast. People had asked me for a couple of years for a podcast, and I was a bit worried that I love lives. I love doing things like this. And so I was like, oh, it'd just be my voice. Like, I'm not sure I could do it. And I love it now. Like, I started the podcast and realized that actually it feels so much more intimate than a live. And because I can't see people's faces, I'm like really truthful. Talk about any things I probably shouldn't talk about on a podcast, because it feels more intimate, and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, we got to #1 a couple of months ago, but you've steamed past me now. I didn't know you steamed past me like running.
Earlier on, we were at 125, and I think you're at 127. So we were almost like side by side in the charts. I'm like, yes, we've overtaken Lisa.
Overtaken by a long way. Yeah, you're doing amazingly. It's brilliant. But yeah, I now love recording my podcast. Generally talk about, it's called Making Money Online, but as with anything, you end up talking about broader issues. And what I've found with ours is that if you go into the story of what makes someone tick and why someone does what they do, rather than just the what they do, it just makes a massive difference. You know, I talk about all the sort of negative things online as well that you can get with success. And what I've loved most about having that podcast is that people who normally wouldn't get to see or hear me have written to me and gone, you talked about bullying, and you talked about like autism, you talked about, you know, what it's like to feel left out in groups online and those kind of things. And I feel like that, and you made me feel less alone. And I think for me, it's worth doing simply for that.
Yeah. We've always said that Joe and I literally spent hours talking like on the phone. When the phone rings, you know it's Joe. You know you can't really answer it unless you've got a good clear window of an hour, because we just get so drawn into our discussions. And for years we've been saying we need to just record this because people would really resonate. People would get a lot from these conversations. And that for us is what the podcast has really become. It's just me and Joe having a chin wag like we almost always do. And at the end of a couple of these podcasts that we've got coming out over the next couple of weeks, we would finish and we're like, oh, that took a tangent, didn't it? Or, you know, so
that's great though, because conversation doesn't it? And everything's nuanced. Everything goes into all these different ways. But I know when I listen to podcasts, when it's just two people having a chat rather than there being an agenda, I get so much more out of it. Like, you know, you hear different sides to things, you hear different debates to things, and it makes you think in different ways. And I think that's a brilliant thing. Can only be.
We're never scripted. I was chatting to somebody at the weekend, and I think, you know, to people who haven't got a podcast or haven't done other things, it seems like a huge thing to do. And in some respects it is, because we've had 10 years to build our confidence and find our people, and we have panicked before about doing lives. We've been through all of those things. But the reality is that we'll talk, obviously we'll have a topic, we've done our research around what we think will be useful, but then we'll just have a few points. So we've kind of got some sort of track we'll cover at some point. And I think it's that people connect with, because it is like you're just having a conversation with us at a pub, you know, at a cafe, or just meeting somebody. And you interview people, don't you, on your podcast?
No, not as often as I do solo. So I do more solo but I do interview people every now and again. And what I really wanted to do on mine was interview people, because you know how everyone interviews like the big people, the gurus out there. And I didn't want to do that because I think we hear from those people all the time. And I think the people we don't hear from are your everyday business person that has a real strong view on something and has looked into that kind of thing and has something to say, or has had something happen to them that is, you know, out of the realms of what we're used to, and what can we learn from that? And so that's kind of the way I went. So I've not interviewed anyone like huge. I don't think I ever will. I'm really enjoying just listening to people's stories. But the solo episodes are the ones that everyone always goes, Lisa's podcast is a bit controversial, because I can't help but talk about what I really think. Yeah. Whereas, you know, if you write a blog, you write what you really think, and then you go, let's just cross all those bits out and put something a bit more tactful. I can't do that on a podcast. I literally it just comes out.
Too late by the time you've submitted it, isn't it? But isn't it our job to start conversations? Like that's the purpose of a podcast, as well as giving people encouragement or ideas, of their own to kind of run away with.
Yeah. I think it's our job to be transparent about what things are really like. Like we can show all the good stuff if we want. We can be like positive. We can show everything amazing. As a multi-7-figure business owner, it's easy for me to do that. I will put some pictures on Instagram and it will look great. But actually, how are we really preparing people for success if we're not talking about some of the other things that can happen? And so for me, it's about making sure that people are prepared and so have strategies to deal with certain things, because life is messy and money doesn't shield you from life. Like, I know people think it does, but it doesn't. And so I think that's really important. And like with what you guys do when you're coaching, you're going into sometimes some darker things, because we are all flawed and we all have things that we need to work on, and those things really need to be talked about as well.
One of the reasons we do what we do is around like well-being and mental health. Like we discovered coaching really early on in our careers, and we're both really fortunate we don't struggle with mental health issues. We're very grounded in our approach to life, but part of that is because we've spent so many years learning strategies for a healthy mind, right? And we get to teach that to other people. And I think just even a slice of what we now know is so helpful to people. And that's one of the reasons for the podcast, is because there's so many people who don't even know what coaching is, or how to access it, or what to do with it. So the more we can get coaching into the hands of people, the better.
And for me, I always describe coaching as an insurance policy for my own mental health. I really genuinely, that's what my experience of it has been, that I've learned. I was always curious about, why do I think the way that I do? Why do you think the way that you do? How is that different? How is it similar? How is that affected by our upbringing? What does that mean for me in the future? And I think the intimacy of coaching is just a really safe space. And how many times do people actually really, are they listened to in a really genuine, contactful way? We all engage in lots of conversations, but to really make full contact with somebody in conversation can be totally transformational. And whilst the initial series, we haven't gone deep into that kind of stuff because we didn't feel that was the time and place to do it. As the podcast continues, I'm sure we will touch upon some more of those things. Do you have your podcast and where you're going to take it?
With me, I just want to make sure with mine that anybody that's listening, even if it's one person that is listening that says, that's made me feel better, or that's made me feel less alone, or that's given me one golden nugget that I can now go and change my business. That's what it's about for me. My main purpose for it, starting in the first place, is that women don't talk about money. Generally, we don't like to talk about money. We see it as a sort of bad thing because we're brought up saying it's vulgar to talk about it. And I think it's really hard to make money online if you don't like talking about money. I think it's, if we make it less taboo, more open, and we get rid of all of the attachments and emotions on it, then it becomes something we can just talk about and we can learn how to get. And as somebody that, I'm not a coach, I'm a strategist. And so for a strategist, my job is to help people make money and do what they really love to do in life. And so the more I can get people listening and kind of going, Lisa talks about money all the time. I didn't have anyone, because of where I come from, I come from a council house background. I didn't have anyone that I could hear that was talking about money in any meaningful way that came from where I came from. And so I always want to make sure that no matter what background you've come from, there is somebody that is talking about money in a normal way that people can go, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. And in reality, for those people that want to become coaches and for that to be their profession, it is a business. You have to learn how to run the business. In order to have the freedom to be able to do that, it needs to be sustainable. And, that's why we have our business lounge membership that has stepping stones. You have kind of more in-depth packages for people around that. And when we think about the proportion of you know, people going into kind of freelance work and the makeup of that. So I think the objectives are quite similar in what we do and what you do, because we want to empower people. That for us is the main purpose of coaching, in lots and lots of different ways. And that really is what the reason that you're doing what you do as well, isn't it? To give them choice, so that people can make the choices that they want to in life, and also to raise aspirations. We feel really, really passionate about that as well.
If people see you doing something, they can then do something. And it's the same with you two. You know, you've built your whole life around coaching, your whole career around doing something that you absolutely love doing, that lights you up every morning. How amazing would it be if more people woke up in the morning and loved going to work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when our husbands have retrained, you know, they've like, oh, we want to find something we love in the way that you love what you do. And we're like,
my husband did.
Like, crack on then.
That's quite a big ask. But to have loved it for, you know, 11 years, that's a really long time. And we're so excited about what's to come as well. And we're growing with the business. The business is teaching us so much. It's connecting us to the most amazing people that are enriching our lives. And so for us, what we're building, it really is a community of people where you're welcomed, you're accepted, you're valued, you're heard. And like everything we do, we enter into it with a learning mindset. So we still got so much to learn, which really excites us. And you know, I think somebody posted on one of your chats yesterday, Lisa, about, you asked about advice for people in business, and somebody put fail forwards, and I loved it. And I also saw that you said this is the best bit of advice on here, and I was just like, yeah, fail forwards. And I thought I think that's what we've always done. And you know, for us, we've had each other. Not everybody needs or wants to have that, although you have got your own, Zoe.
I think it's so important, because most people, the reason that they don't live an extraordinary life, or a life that they really want to live, is fear. Fear is always the biggest thing, and fear of failure is a huge thing. If we turn that around and we don't see failure as something to be scared of, and actually we see failure as a welcome thing, because it means we're learning something every single time, then you're always moving forwards and you're always progressing, and that's a brilliant thing. Like, I've always failed forwards, and I love that was a piece of advice on that thread, because if everybody thought that way, think how much nearer to what they really want to do they would do.
Failure fascinates me, because failure itself it's not a real thing. Like, it's a construct that we put in our head. Like, if that happens, that means I failed. So it's the meaning that we attach to something that sort of says whether we've failed or not. And I think that's where the coaching comes in, is the curiosity around. So what have you made that mean? And what are you taking that might say about you? And where does that point inside of you to something that you need to do some work on? And I think that's just been a constant evolution for me and Joe. In fact, when we were in Croatia, which I know unfortunately you couldn't make, we were working on Joe's website, and she was like, oh, I feel terrified. Oh my God, this is exciting. Like, because there's something there to learn, right? There's like a new thing there. And I think as part of business, the one thing you completely underestimate is how much of a mindset journey all business is going to be, because you have to face into every single fear along the way to achieve the goals that you want. And that's, I think, why purpose and being passion-led and purpose-driven is so important, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through that. Otherwise, it's much easier to turn away and go and get yourself to 5.
No.
And like,
the reality is that profit follows passion. Like, if you're passionate about something and you come upon an obstacle, you will carry on, because you love what you do. If you're not passionate about something, you just want to do it for the money, and you get into an obstacle, you go, oh, well, I tried, and you walk away. And so the profit always follows passion. That's where the money comes from, the passion. People don't see that. They look for gaps in the market, and they look for, you know, what could I be doing that makes the most money? And it really isn't about that. It is all passion.
They think it, they don't necessarily feel it. You've got to embrace both, haven't you? The thinking, the feeling, the doing. It's, you know, it's a big bundle of stuff you have to work.
And you know, launching this podcast is, I always think, you know, take take a deep breath, and then let's step forward, because I think you wrote on something, Zoe, saying, this is one of the most public things we've ever done, even StreamYarding, having these interviews, going across the platforms. But that thing about failure is first attempt in learning, and where people, I think, can get stuck in old stories is when they make one thing mean everything, and they make a decision. But if they can identify what the learning is, that's what releases them and enables them to move forward, because it gives them a positive focus. And for us, like, as you know, podcast isn't about making money. Our Facebook group isn't about making money. It's about building the community, and and giving. We're giving resources, giving food for thought, hopefully inspiring, and that's where it comes from. And we are planting a tree for everybody that rates and reviews our podcast. We've been thinking for such a long time, what can we do? So it's one little thing that we're doing that we will continue to build on. The paddleboard for those that love to paddleboard. Because when you have a passion-led business, you have to have those outlets, don't you? Like, you've had a really good trip to Paris this weekend that we're looking at the photos and could just see how joyful it was. And all those little things that actually give you that boost, resource you, because you're around a lot of people that give a lot to other people, and you have to invest in yourself in order to be able to then invest in others.
It's so important. And I kind of love that you said you were terrified. Like, when you were in Croatia, something came up and you were terrified. But I really do believe that we should be terrified almost daily. Something should be there. Like, if something's easy, or if something doesn't feel uncomfortable, I don't believe we're growing. I think if we find something terrifying, that means that we think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, or we think it might scare us a little bit to even do something. And the growth comes from that, because as soon as you've done it, you're not where you were 10 minutes ago. You're where you are now, and that growth is brilliant.
That was a turning point for me. So one of my values has always been achievement. And, the more you get into our podcast and our stories, like both me and Joey, you're kind of typical high achievers, A grade student, fly through exams, go to uni, fly through that, postgrad, flew through that, and of course we put a lot of effort in, but it was never hard. Not like business is hard.
Oh, my degree was.
All right, whatever. And I remember, kind of breaking away to kind of do some personal work in coaching, and for the first time really having to dig into courage, putting out live videos on LinkedIn, putting out live videos on Facebook, blogging, building my visibility. And whilst my results were slow and steady, those results, I felt every single one of them. Like the pride I felt, the sense of achievement I felt, it meant way more than kind of sailing through a promotion that I was expecting.
You had to come through something to get there. And it's the coming through something that is where everything is. Where the journey is. And if people knew that, they wouldn't be so quick, I think, to have like, okay, I'll be happy when I get to this. I'll be happy when I get to this. I'll be happy when I get to this. The reality is that journey that you're going through to get there is where the real.
Enjoy the journey for sure. And I think coaching is a real place for enabling people to stay grounded and be present and notice the growth and stay focused on the achievement and not just the achievement, that's what it is for me, but on where the meaning is at for each and every one of the clients that we serve. So
we also say to people, the longer you spend in your comfort zone, the smaller your comfort zone will get. So imagine how that feels. It will soon start to feel uncomfortable, in which case you're better off stretching out and being uncomfortable in the growth direction, and doing it. And so it is thrilling, and actually part of it's just like, well, we're doing this, like we're on this adventure. And I think having a business is a massive adventure. And if we hadn't have been in we knew we wanted to be in a mastermind, to be around other people at similar points in their journey. And I think if we hadn't have been, what it's given us is confidence, and seeing so many people do amazing things. There's constant energy in the group from people driving forwards. Sometimes you've got to stop and catch your breath, because you're like, oh, wow.
It is like that. It's like today was like that. It's like this win, this. I'm doing this massive thing. Okay, there's a lot going on.
It's amazing. It's like exiting the year strong, and we're hosting a 2-day coaching summit showcasing the coaches in our business lounge that don't have a platform or building their platforms. And so we want to be able to give them our platforms to be able to showcase that, because we think about what are the things that we wish we had earlier on in our business. And we know that they're all feeling, bit excited and nervous about that, all those feelings that are totally and utterly natural. But one thing is for sure is that we'll celebrate together. And, it's another thing that they can kind of at the end of the year think, what did I do this year that's really contributed to my growth and the growth of other people? When we think about what's going on in the world and how can we help to create a positive legacy in our own way. And our way is through coaching. Your way is through kind of liberating people as well, also from, the corporate shackles that they might feel that they're in.
It's all about freedom. Everything is about freedom. Like the freedom to choose what you want to do each day, the freedom to work if you want to work, the freedom to travel, the financial freedom. It's all about freedom to me. I have a question for you.
Oh, go on. Oh.
So in your podcast, and this will be separate for each of you, what are you most looking forward to talking about on the podcast so that other people know about it?
Oh, good question.
In what's been released, always being released in the series.
What you might do in the future? Or what is it, a subject that you would love to talk about on the podcast? You might not be ready for it yet, or you might have already done it.
I think the one thing I really enjoy is coaching demos, because coaching is such a private space. When we're working with clients in a one, we know how powerful coaching is, and we can sit here and tell you till the cows come home how powerful coaching is and how it changes lives. But no one gets to see it. Like rarely do you actually get to be on the couch watching the coach and seeing that possible. And we have some coaching demos on our YouTube channel, but I would love to do some real coaching demos to really lift the veil on coaching and let people see how powerful it is. So that would be really exciting and terrifying, because obviously we can sit here and say we're great coaches, but when you've got people listening in and scrutinizing, well, she just asked a closed question.
That's true. I think that was really powerful.
Yeah, we train people to be coaches, but that doesn't mean that we are always following all the rules that we train people in. You've got to start by following the rules, and then after that you flex and find your own style. So it's that would be scary and exciting.
And I think then like a build on that would also be us interviewing people that we've coached, because reading a testimonial in black and white is one thing. It's actually really powerful, but actually being able to have a discussion where they can kind of relay, when you did this, or you asked me that, or you just didn't say anything at that point, Joe, and that really was this, or how, tell me how you noticed this pattern, but also weaving that within our own coaching stories and the journey that we've been on, probably in more detail than we would have ever shared before.
Do you think a coach always needs a coach?
To
not
an extent,
24 hours a day.
It's I engage with coaches when I'm feeling myself up against a learning edge. So if I sense it when my values are off. So if I'm frustrated or I'm angry or I'm just worried or not feeling it, I'm like, there's something here and I can't see what it is, because I'm just feeling all the feels and getting annoyed. Like, right, okay, so what's here? And then I'll reach out to somebody who I respect and I trust and I want to work with, and they'll help me unpeel that layer, and then I'm good. And I'm probably good for like another 6 months. Until then I come up against this thing again and I'm like, right, there's something here. And so what I love about coaching is I don't stay stuck. And I think a lot of people get stuck and don't know where to go and don't know what to do with it. And it's frightening when you're stuck, isn't it? To feel kind of in a place. But coaches absolutely need coaches as well, because we're all human.
And there's another part of it, which is like we continually invest in our own personal development. So we've done a lot of different coaching training. When you train to be a coach, or in all the different fields of coaching training that there are, in order to get good at the tools yourself, you have to be coached with the tools. So that's another way that we access coaching, which is actually how we started out. Like, you don't want to go and see a counselor because you wouldn't consider that you needed that, but you still think, I'd love to not have this internal battle in my head, but I don't know where I would go in order to get that, because I'm not at a crisis point or at that point. And so that's been a big part of our story as well. But as we've invested more in our kind of business strategy development, that side of it, I think that's when the gap becomes more obvious, because we're not investing so much, or haven't in the last year, in the coaching side of it necessarily. So, and when we train people to be coaches, we're actually training them with how to coach others, but in doing that, it's how to train your inner coach. And that's really what I feel most passionate about, is also then when coaching people, they can also facilitate those conversations with others. So I listen a lot to my internal coach, have conversations, apply the things that I facilitate with others to myself. And my coachees, actually, in some ways, I get coached through coaching others, because to me, that's a learning relationship. And so, they amaze me, people that I coach, the courage, the determination, they might sometimes, there's a resistance, but then they break through it. They have a new insight. They notice something else. And then you look at yourself and you think, what is there for me to learn that's valuable and take away from it? So for me, it's multi-dimensional.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think as well, because there's two of you, you're always going to, you've got each other.
Yeah.
You're both coaches. So, whenever anything comes up, you're going to be able to have those conversations with each other and facilitate each other's learning and in each other's coaching, really, which I think is amazing that you get to do.
How about you, Lisa? What's your thoughts on coaches?
So I've always had a coach since I started in this world nearly 5 years ago. I've always had someone. And I think for a few reasons, really. One of them is that it can be quite lonely, I think, as an entrepreneur when you first get started, and you have all these questions about you suddenly become self-aware of your own self and the obstacles you're putting in your own path constantly, but you don't know what to do with that. But you read so much about self-development that you become aware of it, and you're like, well, how do I get past that? Like, my money mindset issues were like no one's business. Like, honestly, they were crazy. And so it was coaches that helped me get through each stage. And now I have like coaches for my mindset, mental health side of things. And I have coaches or strategists, if you like, for the business side of things. And I even have sometimes I'm working with 3 people at a time, because I will, if I need the knowledge about one particular thing that I don't know, I will go to somebody with that knowledge and pay them for their help as well. So I've always had a very good support team of coaches, strategists, and different people with different knowledge. But I think that's why my success has been so quick, because I haven't been scared at all to invest in myself from day one.
Yeah, it's given you the agility, hasn't it? And I think that really helps. Yeah, and the resilience. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
really appreciate your time. Really pleased to introduce you to a new audience. We really loved it.
Yeah, and a big thank you to you, because the podcast is obviously born from being in your mastermind as well. So
I'm so glad you're doing it, because you're going to help so many people with it. And good luck for the rest of today. I'm excited to see how the podcast ends up.
Thanks so much. See you soon.
See you later.
Bye.